Joe Duffy, old-time handicapper from offshoreinsiders.com. Joe Duffy, thanks for being back with us this week.
Peter, thanks for having me back. I know it's the final week of the regular season, but we're ready for the bowls, the playoffs, all that stuff.
Absolutely. Thanks for taking these two games, tough games in the last week of NFL. And Texans Colts, I mean, this is a classic game, right? The Texans are playing for the top seed. The Colts are locked into the fifth seed in the playoffs, so this game means nothing to them. And they have a wild card game coming up. I know that, they're at home. They've got Pagano and, all the emotional factors and everything. But I just cannot believe that they're going to be giving a full effort knowing that this game means nothing to them with the wild card game coming up. Houston's playing for the top seed. And so despite the fact that the Colts are at home and getting 6.5 or 7 points, and with the emotional Pagano factor, I have to think the Texans are to play here. What do you think?
No, that's a ton of points that they're getting. We've actually been going against Indianapolis late in the year because we said that they're a team that's been fairly fortunate where their record is a little bit better than their statistics. But no, don't underestimate the importance of the Chuck Pagano. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, that Pagano has to have a certain amount of mixed feelings entering this game. He's ecstatic the team has played well, but you know what? They've played well with him on the sidelines. Now he's returning. It is going to be a big emotional lift for Pagano to come back. He says that he wants to win this game. Also, keep in mind, Indianapolis, a team that went 2-14 straight up last year, this is still psychologically a big game for them. If they can win this game against the team that would be the top seed entering the playoffs, that's going to give them a little extra momentum. Also, the pressure is on Houston. We like to fade teams where the pressure's on them. They've been looking very good the last 3 weeks. They've been blown out twice in the last 3 weeks, including our wise guy winner where we had Minnesota. So we like fading teams that have a lot of pressure on them, and the odds makers more than have taken into account. I mean, more than have taken into account that theoretically Houston has more to play for. Now, in my first 15 or so years in the business, and I must admit I miss these days where we talk about some of the biggest myths in sports. It used to be the single biggest myth in sports was going against teams that quote-unquote need it more. Unfortunately, in recent years, because of the number of injuries and players want to avoid that, and then teams aren't as loyal to players as they used to be and vice versa, now that angle is no longer the godsend that it used to be, but still, Indianapolis doesn't have motivation on paper, but they've got that motivation of going into the playoffs on a high note, and they're getting a ton of points at home. And like I said, do not underestimate, one of my cohorts in the industry likes to call them intangibles. This is a pretty big intangible, Chuck Pagano coming back. So many points, and with a little bit more motivation than you may think, the quote-unquote intangibles, as I said, way too many points. Now, I did notice right before we did this, in some casinos, it's dropped below that key number. It was 7. It's now 6.5 in some places. A half a point can make a huge difference. The square player isn't aware of that, but when you're talking about 3 or 7, a half a point can make a big difference, but especially at 7, I definitely like the home underdog. Oh, and one of the things I looked up, this is not statistically overwhelming, but I was a little curious about teams that have won at least 2/3 of their games straight up, which Indianapolis has, and getting at least 7 points. And I said it's now dropped to 6.5 in some areas, and also it's pretty strong at 6, but specifically at 7, they're 14-8 against the number. Now, that is not statistically significant in and of itself, but I've always said one of the magic of the computer programs is you can test test theories, I should say, and although 14-8 is not a statistically overwhelming statistic, it is consistent with my theory that you give a team this good, that many points at home, it almost seems like you got to take it. And I understand the motivational factors, but Indianapolis doesn't have the pressure. Houston has the pressure, and they haven't been playing well as of late.
Absolutely. Great point about the pressure. Arian Foster also is having some issues as well, so I think you might be onto something here. Indianapolis +7, you can still get that.